without further ado, we'll have to delay our Silk Song playing for a little bit. So the lectures are at this time every week on Thursdays. I'll usually just be yelling at you, but my throat's a little caught up, so I'm using the mic today. This one might not pick it up so well because it's doubling, so apologies for that, but you're all here in person today, so it doesn't really matter. I don't have office hours or a particular office, so if you want to get in touch with me, send me a message on Discord. I would highly recommend you use Discord. If you use Canvas message, I probably won't get it. If you use my .ca email, I straight up won't get it because it's locked, and they haven't given me access yet. So straight to Discord, or if you really want to email me if it's something related to the courses and it's in some kind of official capacity, send it to my .net email, the one in the slides. These slides will be uploaded at the end of the day. Who am I? I'm Marcus. I graduated from this program a few years ago. You all already know this because you had me last year or in some other capacity. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to teach you how to model over the next 12 weeks. So what are we actually doing in this course? This course is a step up from Modeling 1, which I assume all of you have taken Modeling 1 in some capacity. No? I can tell because I was also doing Modeling 1 the last 2 years. So this one is going to be a step up. We're going to focus mainly on environment and hard surface arts. Gavin is not teaching this course, so what we've done is sort of split. For the last 3 years, Gavin and I have been running this course together. In the labs, we've actually done second lectures. So in the labs, we've been running environment art, and in the classes, Gavin's been doing character sculpting. There is now a separate character sculpting class and a separate rigging class. So we have the opportunity to turn this class into hard surface and environment, which is something that hasn't existed in this program before. But that'll be good because it'll better prepare you for anything you need to make for your GDW games. I want this class to be an opportunity to make your GDW games as good as possible, hence getting rid of the weekly activities and everything else. We'll talk about that as we go forward. So the main thing here is teaching you the proper workflow AAA asset development. Last year, when I TA'd you for Modeling 1, we ramped some of that stuff up ahead of time. We don't normally learn Substance Painter in Modeling 1, or Designer, or doing like subdivision surface modeling. We did a little bit of that last year. I'm not sure how many of you actually remember it from the labs, but we did step that up, so hopefully you're not coming into this semester with nothing. If you are, good luck. I've posted a ton of resources already on Canvas. I can speed you up if you go and take a look through them, and I'll post more week to week as we go through. The other big one. Has anyone heard of Ubisoft Next? Yeah, just throw your hand up, just for like general idea. Okay, so most of you have not. Ubisoft Next is a competition hosted every year by Ubisoft Toronto. And what they do is create a series of competitions for different fields that you can participate in and win prizes. Of course, the number one prize is a summer internship at Ubisoft Toronto in the field that you want. Pretty good way to get into the industry. A lot of my friends who work at Ubisoft work there by first winning Ubisoft Next. And I could name like 5, 6, 7 people have come from this university, this program, and gotten Ubisoft through that. So I'd really recommend participating if you can. On top of that, I'm offering 30% of your grade if you participate in Ubisoft Next and complete it here in the course. You can get 30% of your grade for participating, and then that way it's not like an overwhelming amount of extra work that you have to do to get it done, which is also something we've never done before, but we're going to try it. This course is going to push mainly for photorealism. Reason being, quite simply, if you understand how to make something realistic, you can break it down later and do stylized no problem, right? So we're going to push for photorealism using PBR. If you don't know what that is, that's fine, because we're going to go over what it is later when we talk about texturing and things like that. The other thing we're going to cover is how to optimize your assets. We're going to learn about engine tools for debugging. We're going to learn about engine tools for shaders. I am going to dive a little bit into how many of you have taken computer graphics. That is a shocking amount, but that's really good because you need to understand that stuff to actually do the 3D art stuff anyway. So we will be going over that kind of stuff in one of the lectures. It'll be more of a technical demonstration. We'll talk about using engines, what draw calls are, buffers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that will help you optimize your assets that you make as well as your workflows. And then tie into that, creating optimized material setups. We'll be creating more advanced shaders just to get better results all in all. That's something we kind of don't really have here in this program generally, but learning how to make shaders for large assets, right? You may have stumbled into trying to make a giant prop for your environment and you can't figure out how to max the textile density or something like that, you've never used decals or trim sheets before, so we're going to cover all of that stuff as well in our material setups. Any questions regarding that kind of stuff? All good? I know it's a lot to take in right at the beginning, but we'll slowly be going through all this stuff step by step as the semester goes on, and then hopefully that will help your understanding. So why this class? And I'm going to reiterate this point a bunch of times. If you would like to work in the games industry as a 3D artist, you have one class to actually learn how to do that stuff. And it's this one. This is the only one. Whatever other classes you take, they're not going to prepare you for industry. That's just the sorry state of the art courses that we have right now. It's just how it is. This has always been the one class that really nails things home and teaches you how to get into industry. Because of that, it is more difficult. I am going to push you a little bit further, but we'll get to that when the time comes. The alternative is you go through this class and you figure out you don't want to do this as a career, and that's okay too. But I still expect you to put the same effort in. So just a little breakdown of how we're going to handle things with the lectures and labs. I'll be doing the lectures. It's going to be a little bit more theory-based, getting you behind like the ideas of how things works, the program agnostic stuff, why we model the way we do, things like that, the process, the workflow, as well as the class assignments. These are not weeklies. They're the ones that I'm going to explain in a little bit. The labs are with Sukhbir. He is an old student of mine. Some of you are probably familiar with him. Aiden's already shaking his head. Yes, he worked on GAC for like 2 or 3 years, I think. He came to this program just after I did and just graduated last year. He's an incredible character artist, so if you want to do any character artist stuff, you can go ahead and talk to him. He'll introduce himself and show his work and everything when your first lab happens. And I've given him 15% to do whatever he chooses with. We've kind of gone over the assignments that he's going to make, but there's just going to be 3 assignments that are lab-based. And they won't take too long. They're not the kinds that'll take like weeks to complete. They should be like doable within a week. Those are going to be Tuesdays from 2 to 3. I would highly recommend you go to those because that's going to be a lot more of the hands-on stuff. He's really going to get into like the nitty-gritty. I might present the introduction of a topic and then he might finish it. So think of the labs less as like a separate section and more as a continuation of what we're doing here in class. Any questions about all that? No? All right. Well, I've been talking incredibly fast. It's only been 10 minutes, so I would be shocked if you remembered it all, but it's being recorded, so it's okay. We're going to talk about the syllabus and the assignments a little bit, and then we'll sort of dive into getting started on how to prepare ourselves to start this assignment. All in all, we'll probably just be here for another hour and a half. The first assignment is going to be our observational model. So this assignment has been going on in this course since its inception. Every year students do this, but this year it's a little bit different. So in the next 5 weeks, October 7th is when it's going to be due. The goal is to create a complex model with some form of realism, but still keep it optimized for games. This is like, basically think of it as your first portfolio piece in a professional setting. We're going to follow the workflow from start to scratch, from scratch to finish, just with a cube, and we're going to end up with some highly realistic prop, ideally. So things like proper topology for games specifically, and we'll talk about the differences between game topology and other program topologies. We're going to learn a lot more about UVs and baking, because I don't think that's something we covered last year at all, or maybe I touched on it briefly. We're going to cover PBR textures and the science behind it a little bit as we get into creating masks and different textures and things like that. And that rubric will be up on Canvas. So there's a lot more details there, as well as the point breakdown. I'll go through it again when we get to the syllabus part and when I pull it up as well. The second assignment is a substance designer material. So you should be at least somewhat familiar. If you came to the labs last year, you would know what substance designer is. Whether or not you actually remember is a whole different story. This one's due November 11th, so another month later when we're deep into starting our environment art. And it's a tileable texture program that lets you generate all kinds of different materials for your environment or models or whatever else. So very useful, very hard skill to learn, but it's easy to get started in it. So that'll be your second assignment. And then we'll talk about what following node patterns and organization and clean graphs means when we get closer to. The third, this is the big one. Think of it as your culminating activity. If you've checked Canvas already, you'll know that there are 2 assignments that are open up at 11 today. So as soon as this class is over, the first assignment, the observational model, and this assignment will open up. This one obviously due right at the end though, week 12. So this is completing a environment for your game, for a project, for whatever else. This is where I'm saying you can do Ubisoft Next. If you choose to do Ubisoft Next instead of working on your GW game or project, that's fine. It will slot in here and follow the same kind of principles and everything. And everybody else's submission are going to sort of emulate what a Ubisoft Next style submission would look like. So a professional portfolio piece done, you have your fly-through renders and different optimizations shown, and I'll show some portfolio examples when we get closer to it. So we're going to be making use of optimizations for games, learning about decals, trim sheets, all that kind of thing, generating materials, yada, yada, yada. And then all the things that we learned from the observational model, your proper topology, your UVs, your bakes, we're going to apply to our environments as well, which are essentially a bunch of those models, but just crammed into a space. Okay, and the rubric for that is on Canvas as well. I'll break down in a second. All right, so I just talked about this, but yeah, so the Ubisoft Next category, it starts September 8th. That is in 4 days, and it ends, I believe, sometime in December. So you basically have the semester to work on it and also the semester to actually submit it for Ubisoft. So it lines up perfectly. So if you'd like to participate, just give me a heads up for that before you dive into your third assignment. Just let me know so I can keep a tab on it. And I'll give you regular feedback throughout. So what does this actually look like in terms of mark breakdown and everything else? The observational model is worth 25%. It's a huge component of your learning for this course. The substance designer material is a much shorter one. It's worth 15. The small environment, like I said, worth 30, but you have 3 ways to do it, whether it's for GDW. You have to make an environment for GDW anyway. So that's kind of the goal with this, is you're hopefully working on your GDW environment for this project. The last bit is the sketchbook assignments. Same deal as Gavin likes to do it. They're 5% each. There's 3 of them. And the goal with those essentially is just a check-in. It's where you're at for your projects that exist. I don't need to go out and create new things for these sketchbooks. I just want to see progress shots of the things that you are working on. Maybe what stage your environment's in a couple weeks, or what kind of random blockouts you've done, or anything like that. It's not as intense as Gavin's, where you're going to be doing like 30 props just for the sketchbook. This is kind of just going along with the stuff you're already working on. Right, and I think right there, yeah, so five completed assets is the main goal by the end of the semester kind of thing. So you can post your progress shots throughout sketchbooks 1 to 3, and then by the end you should have hopefully 5 completed new project pieces. All right, any questions about that? Everybody wants to get out of here early. Okay. Then I'll mention the last bit with the assignments. It's the standard university policy, 5% per late, whatever, but you can reach out to Super and I with your reasonings for lateness and everything else, and it's okay. What's not okay? Because you guys are in 3rd year now for the most part. Embed your images so we don't have to crucify you, because it takes forever to download your 200 megabyte blend files or open your 3 million polygon Sketchfab links. It really puts a rut in Super's day, because he's going to be marking a lot of this, and mine when I'm marking. Go to your files, delete the big ones from last year. You don't need them anymore. Probably you have a bunch of 4K images and textures super unoptimized that you used last year because we didn't really cover optimization. Delete them so you have space for new uploads. Super simple. You just go onto Canvas. You go to your account. You go to Files. And then you go delete the ones that are really big. That's pretty much it. Then you have room. So if you're getting that notification that says you don't have room, this is what you do. There.
How do you delete everything?
How do you delete everything? Start clicking.
Okay, thank you.
I wouldn't recommend deleting everything. You know, maybe there's some past work you want to save. You can go download that first, though, and then go from there. Anything else on that? Nope, all good. Okay, and then one last note, occasionally Super and I will post a video that demonstrates how to submit something. For example, this is a substance designer graph. If you give me a screenshot that looks like this, I can't tell what a single one of those nodes is or does, or like, I'm just making stuff up at that point. So there are certain ways that we have to submit some of these things. In Substance Designer, for example, there's a button that you click and it exports a high-res, fully readable version of your graph, which is one extra step compared to hitting, it's actually less buttons than hitting screen cap and then going, whoop. So follow these or you will lose marks. It's really that simple. The videos will never be longer than like 10 minutes. Late submissions, 5 minutes a day, like I said. I mentioned before, mentioned again, this is the only class to really become a proper industry artist. It's going to be a little bit tougher than Modeling 1 for sure. Reach out to Sophia and I. We're friendly people. We don't bite. We're nice. We will help you through every step of the way. And because it's Discord, like, Super's a bit more of a night owl. If you're at like 2 a.m., you can message me or him. He'll probably get back to you first, though, at like 3 a.m. If you're an early morning person, I'm usually up at like 6, 7, so I'll get back to you at like 8 a.m., something like that. It'll be quick. Like, we understand that when you need help is when you need the help. Reach out right away and we'll get back to you quickly. That's another reason I recommend Discord. All right. That is everything as far as this. Oh, one last thing, actually. I'll just go over really quick the calendar. You've all seen it. It's all on Canvas already. Right. Instead of doing random topics every week, we're continuing for long periods of time to hopefully get you adjusted to each topic. So this observational modeling thing, we're just going to do that straight for 5 weeks. The first 2 weeks, this week and next week, are going to be all about your blocking out, your modeling. We're going to talk about why we're doing things and choosing our objects and everything. Next week, we'll go over topology theory and things like that, introduction to how subdivision works, yada, yada, yada. And then we'll just slowly work on our model week to week until week 5 when we do our final renders and creating portfolio. Then we branch into environment creation. So just before the study break, we'll do environment creation 1, where we break down how we use our references to create different scenes, what kind of objects we need, how to plan out our workflow and everything like that. Then we'll have our Thanksgiving break. And when we come back, we'll polish up whatever blockouts we use and go from there. So everything from week 6 on is going to be using Unreal Engine. You're welcome to use whatever real-time environment you want. I'm using Unreal because I'm pretty sure that's what you guys are typically told to use for GW for 3rd year-ish. I'd recommend using it if you can. It's a little bit harder to work in, but as far as the environment stuff, you end up with way better results and have way more tools, and I will also be using it, so it'll be easier for me to help you. Yes?
You want Unreal 5 specifically if we do Unreal, or not?
Whichever one you like. I use 4.27 for a lot of stuff because 5 is a little bit buggy. I'll probably be using 5 in the class, but it's up to whatever you're going to be using for GW, really. So environment creation is going to take us all the way through to week 10, and then for weeks 11 and 12, we'll get into a little bit of the character stuff. There's not a ton, but it should be enough to get you started. So we'll have intro to character sculpting. We'll talk about the high poly workflow and actually creating these characters, and then we'll do a week on retopology, which is how we create these characters meshes for games after we've sculpted them. And Super will be a big help for those 2 weeks as well. Cool. Now that's everything. Last chance to ask questions about the course outline.
What is the Ubisoft Next theme right now? Do you know?
Comes out on the 8th.
Okay.
So as soon as September 8th hits, go to Ubisoft Next website. You can just Google Ubisoft Next. And then down at the bottom, you'll find all of the different disciplines that you can do it for, right? So on September 8th, it will open up here and you can go ahead and click and you'll be given a prompt. So the way Ubisoft Next works, you're given they change it every year, but I think last year it was a 6 foot by 6 foot area or 10 foot by 10 foot area. And you're building your entire environment within that 10 feet by 10 feet limitation. So they're not looking for huge projects. They're looking for essentially like extremely well done dioramas.
So,
Granted, people do cheat this and not stick to that, but you can.
so like for the theme, was it just the size, or was it like
They'll give you a loose theming. When I did it like 4 years ago, it was much more specific. They wanted an attic environment and then gave an entire backstory. Recently, they've been loosening up every year on the requirements for the storytelling. So last year, I think it was literally just you are an apothecary during war. Period.
interesting?
So we'll take a look at what some of the winners were. Apothecary interpreted as shopkeep for random thing, right? But so there's an environment, small space, boxed in. That was it. Okay,
Wow.
that was it. I guess there weren't very many submissions last year. It is just there's usually more than one winner though.
Is there?
Like there's the grand prize winner, but then your finalists also will win prizes or whatever. And a lot of times finalists still do end up with jobs. If you're good enough, they'll just kind of hire you. A lot of the people I was talking about earlier who work there now, they didn't come first, they would come second, and then Ubisoft would go, hey, we still need your skills. So definitely compete. We'll see what this one has in it. Again, tight, enclosed space, pretty small overall, something you can do in 4 months. All right, and then it begins. So, INFR 3345, this is our environment and hard surface art class. Quick recap, please have Blender installed. You probably do. I'm like 99% sure you do, but just in case you don't, please install Blender. I'm going to be using version 4.43. That's just the version that I've got at the moment. I had to update for some stuff. So unfortunately, that means if you would like to use my files and make sure that they are working, the example templates and things that I give, you'll have to be running 4.43 or above-ish because they keep breaking a bunch of stuff recently. Back like 3 years ago, it was okay to have different versions, but now because of how often they change geometry nodes, it's a little bit trickier. So I'd recommend 4.43. There's an LTS version. Run with that if you can. And everything that I give you will be 100% compatible. That includes things like add-ons. I have a bunch of add-ons. I'll be sharing them with you to use. I'll be talking about which ones I'm using when I'm using them. But they're only going to be compatible with 4.43 as well. So I'd recommend going with that version. So what are we actually doing here? Well, it's pretty simple. We want to create some kind of shape, and how we're going to do that is by manipulating a few basic primitives that we have. Generally speaking, just squares, but occasionally you might use a cylinder, and even less occasionally you might use a sphere. My main goal for today and for the rest of the semester is to get you able to visualize how each object is broken down into these kind of shapes. Super simple example. What kind of shapes can we break this into? Callum?
Sphere, cylinder, and then maybe smaller cylinder,
Pretty much. It's all just spheres and cylinders, right? So something like this is super simple. But if I asked you to do like a rhinoceros, you might start to think twice. That said, by the end of the semester, hopefully you'll be able to think about how you might break down a rhinoceros in your head. Good practice for when we're not in class is to look at random objects throughout the world and just think about topology-wise how it would exist in 3D space. Maybe this desk, maybe your friend, whatever you've got around you. Another quick recap is going to be our big 5, I think I called them last year, modifiers. So these ones are ones you should already be familiar with. I'm going to assume you are when we start modeling, and I'm just going to like use them without talking about them. So if you are unfamiliar with them, just yell at me, stop me if I do something that you're not familiar with, and I'll go over and explain just in case you don't know. We have the solidify modifier, which is going to create thickness or depth for any of our planes. We have the array modifier, which is going to duplicate in an array any object that is using it. Subdivision surface, which we haven't explored fully. We will explore that a lot more this term, but basically it makes pointy things smooth. The mirror modifier, which I don't use, but I will talk about when I would use it as we go through. And the Boolean modifier, this is the big one for this year. Understanding the Boolean modifier is what's going to take you from modeling 1 beginner to actually good at modeling. Because once you are familiar with the Boolean workflow, everything you will make 5 times as fast, and it will still be optimized for games with very little work. We'll talk about that a lot more. Now we get into the new stuff. So a lot of this probably looks super unfamiliar to you because you guys, you're just kind of like Blender. Boom. That's it. Maybe 3D code's mixed in there somewhere for some reason. Unfortunately, you don't actually really use 3D code in the industry unless you work at Blizzard specifically and you're hand painting things. So if you're anyone else working anywhere else, this is what you'll be using. Does anyone know what Maya is? Anyone actually use Maya?
It's not years though.
Fair. Maya is the industry standard modeling package. It is equivalent in many ways to Blender. A lot of the skills are interchangeable. Super uses Maya. I'm not sure if he's going to use Blender for the tutorials. We'll see. He might switch over just to make it easier for you guys. He's well versed in both. I'll be using Blender, but I'll mention briefly if there's something in Maya that's different. I'll mention it in case anybody here is using it. Next, we would typically go into sculpting. And I should mention, this is for our high detail hero assets and that kind of thing, right? You're not going to make a sculpted, baked down version of every single asset in your scene, but we'll cover that when we get to environments. I want to get you guys familiar with the highest of high quality first, and then we'll move down into some workflows. Anyone recognize this logo? Any ideas? Aiden? ZBrush. Boom. Very expensive. I think I paid well over $2,000 for it way back when. I don't recommend that you guys get it per se. Everything I teach is going to be program agnostic, but if you want to do this for your career, then get it. There's a 2-week free trial. I'll leave it up to you to decide when you want to use that 2-week free trial. You might want to use it at the beginning when we're going over the high poly stuff, or you might want to save that for the end when we're doing the character stuff. I believe Super will be doing the character stuff and myself in ZBrush, just because it is a much better software and it runs way better on crappier computers, like our laptops. But ZBrush allows you to take a lot of polygons and work them very intricately into different shapes, create cracks, details, create entire characters, anything that needs a lot more polygons. If you've used Blender, you probably know that when you start to hit like 2 million polygons, your computer starts to absolutely crap itself out. ZBrush, I'm regularly working on projects with upwards of 16, 20 million polygons without any issues, stuttering, or anything like that. So very good program, and there's bridges between Blender and ZBrush to allow you to quickly work between them both. I will share that add-on with anybody if they want it. They'll all be in the resources once I get that out to you. We then take our high poly from ZBrush and our mid and low polys from Maya, and we create a low poly UV map. Also in Maya, typically, for us, again, it'll be Blender. We're only UV unwrapping one, something that comes up every year, and you guys don't have any context for this, so you might forget, but I'm just giving you the heads up. Do not UV unwrap the high poly. Do not do it. You may have watched tutorials on like Unreal Engine 5 and using Nanite, and they unwrap the high poly. That's specifically for Nanite only. We're not really working with Nanite for this. Do not unwrap the high poly. If you're going to remember one thing from this class, do not unwrap the high poly. We take this high poly and we're baking it down through a process that we'll talk about during the CG lecture. We bake down our normals, and that creates fake high poly details on a low poly mesh. For example, rounded corners. We want our corners to look like this because that's very efficient for the engine. It's just nice and easy. It is the minimum amount of faces needed to create a 90-degree angle. But we want our faces to look like this, like they're nice and beveled and rounded so that they catch light better. What do? We can bake down our rounded high poly to our straight angle low poly, and it'll fake that it's rounded even though it's not. There's a bunch of different tips and tricks with that. There'll be a lot of time spent UVing because there's a lot of specifics, but that's the general process. Then, and only then, once we have all of that done, we texture. So the majority of creating these assets and making them believable is not the texturing, it's everything else we do. It's preparing for the texturing. If anybody works on cars, you know when you're painting a car, the work is the prep. Your surface should be smooth. It needs to be clean. It needs to be wiped down with primer, Bondo, whatever. You're laughing.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I'm a little bit out of order. I work on mine all summer, which is actually going to come up in a second.
Work at a Chevrolet dealership.
That's sweet. I wish I could work at a dealership. I don't get paid. I do it from home. So, if you don't have PureRef already, I'm pretty sure I would have told you to download it last year. This is where we actually start getting into the hands-on stuff. Download it, like right now. It's literally free. Go. You can find it at preref.com. It'll ask you for a donation. You just type in 0, and then you go about your day. It is industry standard. Absolutely every artist ever basically uses it because it's just so good. By the amount of clicking I'm hearing, a lot of you don't already have it, which is mind-boggling to me. Basically, it is a floating window that you put reference images in. That is it. But it's the best of the best of actually doing that. Some people prefer to just have a Photoshop document open on the sides. They can draw on it or whatever. That's fine too. Some people just love shoving all their images right in Blender. Also fine, but I'd recommend PureRef. Now we're going to use it in a couple minutes. Once we get started on our problem. Additional resources for you if you really want to jump ahead. These are industry standard workflows. These are the videos these industry standard workflows originate from. So the one that I'm going to be teaching you, it does originate from a guy named Simon Fuchs, and it is now basically industry standard. Everybody uses it literally everywhere. You can find tutorials like this one if you want to jump ahead. Eric?
I'm just stretching, sorry.
Oh, no worries. But it is expensive. It's 35 USD. It covers a bunch of different stuff, and it's in Maya, so it's not quite exactly what we're doing here. But you can get a general feel for how things work. Same with the one on the left. It's actually one of Gavin's old students, Dylan, and he creates tutorials like this as well. Of course, if you just show up to class, we'll be doing all of this. But if you want to really get ahead and you're tired of waiting for me to teach you it, you can use these as well as supplemental tutorial stuff. Yep.
Just double checking, the slides will be posted after class.
Yep, slides will be posted after class. Okay. Additionally, in the slides, there is a link for the 3D Art Resources tab, and this is a list of every tutorial or add-on or anything I've basically ever used, reviewed, there for your viewing pleasure. I give this to the students so they have an idea and have a baseline for where to start. You'll get started with some good add-ons and things like that. I need to update some of the links, but for the most part, everything is there. Take a look if you want to get some more resources. Right, so all of our modeling is going to be happening in Blender. Today we're going to start with box modeling, and we're going to work our way into creating proper blockouts. I'll be explaining my process along the way. It won't take too long, hopefully. We're just getting set up today. So we're going to prepare ourselves, our program, our files, our images, everything for our first assignment, because it's due in 5 weeks, which is not a ton of time, but it should be enough. So this is an example of a blockout. I did it really quickly. It takes less than a day. It's just a bunch of basically primitive shapes, right? Nothing crazy, no crazy modeling or complicated shapes, just a bunch of boxes. So right now we're not going to worry about topology. We'll clean it up after. Right now we're just worrying about getting our solid fundamental shapes. But what are we actually modeling? Well, that's where observation modeling comes into play here. This assignment is less about creating something interesting and more about creating something detailed. Observation is your best tool. The ability to look at something and understand it and recreate it in 3D is what will separate you from other people. So what I'd recommend you do is choose something that's already in your possession, something that you can hold in your own hands. It doesn't have to be crazy complicated, but try and push yourself. Once you've chosen something as well, I'm going to open up a little submission thing where you can put in your reference images, and then Super AI will approve it. It's not for grades, but we have to approve it before you guys start working on it, just so you're actually going on the right path. So we're trying to create a complex model with the goal of reason, and it requires you to build good references. Because if you don't have good references, your model is going to stink. So we're working one step at a time, going through and making sure every step is good. And we're not going to texture anything yet. So here's our next 5 weeks. Today is going to be modeling our blockout, generally speaking. I'm not going to do all of it in class. I'll probably work a little bit between classes, but the general idea of how we're getting there will be covered in the class. We're going to polish our blockout. I'm going to show you 2 different workflows, each probably an hour and a half, on how we can polish our asset, whether it's through subdivision surface modeling or whether it's through sculpting, retopology, and creating those high details that way. Then we're going to create a low poly. So after we've created our blockout, we might reuse that as our low poly, or we might have to make a new one depending on how our topology is holding up. We're going to UV that low poly, so 3 and 4 we'll do in the third week. Week 5, we'll probably cover baking our high poly details to our low poly and creating all these maps that you've never heard of. How many of you have used the curvature map before? Other than Lucas? Oh yeah, kinda. How many of you used AO map? That one might be a bit more familiar. Also just Lucas? Okay, we have a lot to learn. We're gonna get there though. And then the final class, before we render it, will be texturing in Substance Painter. I'm gonna teach you color theory for 3D texturing. All of the bits and pieces of realism. We're gonna learn how roughnesses maps work and interact. We're gonna learn how metalness maps work and interact, and standard practice for that, right? There's a lot of standard practice. If you follow step by step, you will get a good result. A lot of people think this stuff is like, oh, it's too creative, there's too many choices, I don't know where to start or what to do. A lot of it in 3D is decided for you. What colors can we use? How much color theory do I need to know? It's in 3D. If you use color, you're gonna get dummied. Your color needs to be very low saturation so that your lighting can carry the work, right? That's a decision already made for you. Oh, my metalness map is something like 50% metallic. What is 50%? No, it's black and white. Metalness map only exists because people were confused by 50% specular and different combinations, so they invented a new workflow that makes it, oh, is this thing metal, is this thing metal? Super simple. We'll get to all that as we get closer to those topics, but that's the idea of how every lecture is going to play out. So, choosing a model. This is really important because people way overestimate their skills or way underestimate their skills. This is the model I did for this class. It's not very good, but it's there, and it's what I did 4-ish years ago, I think. It's been a long time. But it's presented in a way that's nice and professional. So even though the model itself is kind of whack, it's okay. We found a way to present it in a way that makes it look better. So that's kind of my goal with you as well. You need to sell yourselves here. You're making a portfolio piece, sell it as best as you can. So you need to pick something, probably, that you have a personal tie to. If you just pick coffee cup or mug, you're not going to care. You're not going to want to present it. You're not going to gain anything from that. If you pick something you're interested in, replica prop from one of your favorite video games, or an old family camera, for example, if I just fly way back, those were 2 things that I chose to make because it's fun. And those are things that I would actually want to present. They're things I like. They're things I'm interested in. So don't go picking like a coffee cup you found on the ground. And the last bit is, if you want to do a character, come talk to me directly. Probably not going to allow it unless there's some external reason for it. But if that's something you're really interested in, just let me know. What else can we do as far as making this easier for ourselves? Don't pick a video game controller. That seems to be everybody's first idea. I don't know why. They all pick video game controller. They struggle for 8 hours to make the handles a nice curved organic shape, and then they give up and then drop out of the class. So don't do that. It's really simple to pick something else, anything else. Something like a Game Boy is less organic, easier to create. So what do I mean by organic? Organic is going to be shapes with a lot of curves, flows, and ebbs. Something like a controller meant to be held in your hand, something like a human. These are things that are very organically shaped. Something hard surface, more organic or less organic, is something like a Game Boy, a brick, anything more square sort of in nature. You notice we still have nice round shapes on the edges and in the corner, but those round shapes are ones that we can do very easily using bevels. So my advice to you is, if you can't right now imagine how you're going to create each of the curves on a shape, pick something within your scope. If you think you can look at these and go, oh yeah, I would just like create a tube and then like solidify and then like blah, 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 and that works for you, go ahead. But my guess is you're just going to look at this and go, oh yeah, it's round. And then that's easy to understand. So something personal, something hard surface, something like this. I'm going to be making this alongside you guys, class by class, just to sort of go through and provide a demonstration of the topics I'm talking about as we go through. This is a car jack. This particular one is not my car jack, but it's close enough that it's the one I'll be using. So we're going to go through how we can create good references for this and how we can get started modeling something like this. If your prop is somewhere in this realm, you'll probably have a good time working on it. The other thing I'd recommend, you'll notice this car jack is not brand new. The reason this is not a picture of mine is because mine is brand new, and that's boring. We don't want brand new car jacks. We want used ones that have told stories. This thing has been beat up. Somebody fell on this or something. Their knee busted it up. That wheel has been run through. I don't know how many cars this thing's lifted, but it's more than one. That kind of stuff tells a story. That stuff's going to be good. If you have an object like that, it's way, way, way more of a learning opportunity than just going like, bam, metal material, brand new, we're done, right? So this Game Boy is my Game Boy. Like literally I have it at home. Some of the parts of it, right? Like there's a big nick right there. That does actually exist on mine. There's like little scratches in certain areas. That actually exists on mine. All that kind of stuff, right? I did accidentally drop it off of a fridge and nick that bottom corner. These are like real, actual storied elements of this prop that you will hopefully have on your prop that you choose as well. I'll iterate for like the 5th time, which is why you should pick something personal to you. All right, now we can actually get started making things. So how are we going to model this? We're going to create a blockout and we're going to do it in the easiest way possible. We're going to model 2 pictures. Very simple, but there's a problem. Your eyeballs are not very good at seeing things in a flat 2-dimensional space. They are very good at seeing things in 3-dimensional space. We're going to be modeling from the top, the front, the side, more like a CAD software than anything else. But to do that, we need to get our pictures to be as orthographic as possible. There's still room for interpretation. The best 3D artists out there are the ones that are just going to be able to look at a 2D image and go, bang, I know exactly how deep that is, what kind of shape is going to sort of make that match, and how this all fits into space. But you guys aren't good enough at that yet. So we're going to build up by modeling the 3 pictures, and we'll slowly remove pictures until we're down to just looking at a picture and understanding and building. How do we get these orthographic photos? If you could please pull up your phone. All right, you've got a phone. Great. Your phone has a camera, most likely. That's a flashlight. Camera. Here's an issue that everybody, I don't know why, I'm getting reference images of this, let's say. I want to model this from the front, the side, and the top. So I'm going to get a photo of the front, the side, and the top, and maybe the back too, if you can. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go like this, and then I'm going to go like 0.5 because I'm really close to it. And then I'm going to click. Now I've got a photo. It's a little bit harder to tell from my tiny phone screen at the front of class. We're going to tell me what the problem with this photo is.
And you're too close, so the sender is going to be like distorted.
Distorted. It's hella distorted because I was like 2 feet away from this image or from this phone right here. Right. The closer you get to something, think about this cone coming out. The further back it is, the wider the cone. Right? Yes.
It would get worse with a wide angle lens.
And it would get worse with a wide angle lens, which you have to use when you're this close to it. So how do we get proper or close to proper orthographic images? You get as far away from the thing as possible. I don't care how far it is. Your image doesn't need to be optical. We're not looking for high quality here. We're just looking for flat. You can even tell with your eyes, right? If I go this far away from it, I can tell, I can see less of the sides, less of the top, and less of the bottom from here, right? I'm just seeing the front face. And that's what you want when you're creating good reference images. So that's my advice to you when you actually go about creating these references. For now, you should just be thinking about what prop you want to do. Those reference images, though, are the ones you'll submit to that first checkpoint, and then I can go, okay, these references are good, or okay, these are awful. Why do they need to be good? Well, that's what we're going to start looking at right now. If we start looking at car jacks, we can start to grab images like this one. And these are going to make our lives so much easier when we actually put them in. This is not the kind of floor jack I want to build. This one looks a little bit more like it. So let's go ahead and start with this image. What is an AVIF file? You go ahead and steal the image, and we're just going to cut it up into a few different pieces. It doesn't need to be perfect. You would have your own pictures of this, but I just have this because I don't have a card jack on me at the moment. All right, so we can save our reference images to the desktop, to our pure ref. I'll go ahead and grab the top image as well. And then we'll look at how we can align these and use them in Blender to start making our blockout. So this is Blender. If you're unfamiliar, we start with this default cube. We're going to delete the default cube and drag our images in. So now we have our blueprint. Yep.
What's the point of deleting it when you could just move it out of the way or like make it invisible?
You could, but deleting it is faster. So we just delete it, and then we know it's gone, and our scene is clean. So we're going to hit Alt-G. My screencast keys are on. Alt-G and Alt-R to reset all of these images. And we're going to use our numpad, or if you're using your laptop, probably your number keys on the top, to get our different views. So we know that the 1 key is our front view, our 2 is our side, and our 7 is our top. We want to model this going backwards into the Y. So I'm going to rotate this image here. And then I'm just going to start to line it up roughly in the middle. It's not going to be perfect, but we know that this is a center point and this object is symmetrical. So we only have to model 1/2 of it. So I'm going to line this up as close to the center as I possibly can, even though it doesn't need to be perfect. And then we'll go ahead and move our side profile by just rotating it a couple times and making sure it's lined up directionally. So, so the front of this is the front of this. From here, we can slide this back out of the way because we're going to be working mainly in orthographic view. So it doesn't matter how far away this image is, it's always going to look like it's close. So we can put it way out of the way and move it up. I'm going to model this as if the ground is at the ground level. So we'll move our wheels up to match. And we're just going to flip between our side view and our front view to try and get an idea of where we're at with this. We can also cheat a little bit by using some proxy objects. So if I add this cube, New Blender doesn't pre-compile the shaders, so you just have to wait until they compile to material preview. Yeah, I think it's because of the geo nodes.
I would like go to edit. I would be just in the solid color mode, hit edit mode, and go to edit my materials to remove unused materials. And the moment I go to materials, I have freezes for them.
Yeah, it doesn't pre-compile anymore. I don't know why they made that change, but so anyway, while we wait for this to compile, there we go. Never mind. We can cheat a little bit. So how do we want to line these up? We know that this handle and that handle should end up in the same space when we look at the x-axis. How can we do that? We can just use some kind of proxy mesh. So I'm just going to slide this mesh up until my edge is lined up with the top of the handle. And now I have something that I can use in my other view to line up this handle. So if we move this forwards now, right up until it touches, we know that our images are going to perfectly align, right? This handle ends there. Scale is a little off, so we can change that as well. Because I've already lined up the handle, I'm going to scale from the handle instead, if it actually lets me. Never mind, it doesn't. Move it up. Line up the handle, check, needs a little bit more, scale it up, line up the handle, check. And that looks pretty good. It's never going to be 1000% perfect, and it also doesn't really need to be because we're going to interpret what's missing. So now we have a scene that's set up to start modeling. but it's not perfect. There's something we have to do later, but for now we're just going to start with the modeling. By default, each one of these cubes is 2 meters across, right? We're thinking about scene and scale. We want to bring these things into game engines. They need to fit the world that they're in. Can you tell me how big car jacks are? Yeah, not 2 meters long. So if we just hop into our file and start modeling, like a lot of you probably do, if I start to model to this image, how big is my car jack going to be?
Pretty large.
And so what does that mean when I put it in engine?
Pretty low. Again,
It's going to be huge. You're going to have to scale it down. Normally, that's not a huge problem, but when working with realistic props, that means all of our modifier numbers are wrong, because if I bevel by 0.1 meters and then I put it in the engine with the bevel of 0.1 meters and it's actually supposed to be 6 times smaller, now the bevel is the whole object. If I use textile density appropriate UVs, they're also wrong because they're trying to match my number of pixels to real world space, but it's not the right real world space. So if you can't get a perfect idea of how big something is, you can just estimate. I know that these things are roughly like 3/4 of a meter long-ish, maybe a meter. It's not going to be exactly perfect, but we can sort of shrink things down to our 3D cursor. That way I know it all stays aligned. Just using this cube as a reference. So if we go to item, this cube is now 0.71 meters long. Right, 0.75. So that seems about appropriate for this kind of object. Maybe a little bit smaller. And then the handle sticks out. Okay, perfect. Now we have a good base to start from. We're going to hit Control A and apply the scale. If you remember from last year, I told you, if you're struggling with something, hit Control A and apply all your things. If you're ever debugging, Control A, apply. Hit apply, rotation and scale. I'd recommend saving at this point because you're done. You're now set up to start building your blockout. So what we're going to do is I'm going to first, if you remember, I kind of lined up this so that the wheel is touching the ground. So we know that the bottom of our object, the absolute bottom, is going to be the ground. We should set up our origin point to the bottom of our cube, and then we know that everything is bottomed out. So if I move my 3D cursor, this is something you'll be doing a lot. I'm selecting these bottom vertices, moving my 3D cursor, and then up here in object, you can set origin to your 3D cursor. Then move your 3D cursor back to the world origin, and then again, Shift S to move your selection to cursor. This is basically how every project starts, and then you know your object is grounded out, and anything built should be above this ground level so that your object isn't floating. When you export into Engine, this is a problem that a lot of you have probably faced, is you export from Blender, you put it in your engine, and then your origin point of where the object is supposed to be in the engine is like 1 kilometer away from the actual object. It's because you didn't center your object around this world center when you export. It's going to treat this 0, 0, 0 as its origin. So all of your objects need to be exported from this point. Okay? Even if you have multiple in a scene, you need to be moving them all to the origin before you export them. But we'll do that more when we get to environment stuff. So from here, it's quite simple. I'm going to build a blockout. We're going to focus on the big shapes and slowly but surely move into the smaller and smaller shapes by checking our references. I only have the one reference picture, but it's this one. We have these big side skirts here. And so that's what we want to start with. We can use edit mode to start moving our vertices around and turn this cube into something that's a little bit less cube-like. So here we go. Very simple. I've got an edge. I'm going to match the edge in the picture. Boom. Any of you can do that. As long as your reference images are good, it makes this part so simple. This top edge, I'm going to keep modeling from the side view. I'm hitting 3. I'm going to move this one down, also until it matches up with the picture. Front edge, same thing. Move it forwards till it matches up with the picture. Oh no, I don't know where it ends because there's a wheel in the way. Top view. Now I know where it ends. It ends right there. So we can grab it and we can move it from the top view back to here, right? Super simple. And if you have a back image and the other side image, front image, it makes this even easier because you don't need to do any guessing work. You know where all of your vertices need to be to start. Okay. So also from this top, I can start to move these in. I haven't added a single vertex yet. We're trying to keep everything as close to boxes as possible for now. Okay. I'm also going to add a mirror modifier at this point. I don't have any add-ons on this computer, otherwise I wouldn't be using this. But so add modifier, I have to type in mirror, and now I only have to model 1/2. So we'll just grab these edges, extrude them in, turn on clipping. Complete the face on the inside. Okay, now we have one modelable half, but that's all we need. So let's keep breaking this down piece by piece. We're not looking to create one solid mesh, we're breaking everything down. These don't go all the way to the inside. They have a little bit of thickness, but not that much. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out. Come back to the side view, and we'll move that bottom up to match. Okay. Again, trying to add as little geometry here as possible. I'm going to add one edge loop here, but I'm not going to close it. Let me just dissolve this edge. I don't see a problem with this. What did I just do? So
You made it not like a triangle or a rectangle / square.
That's right. I just made a fat n-gon. Modeling 2, we're here to teach you that this is not a problem. Okay? In modeling 1, we like to tell you that these n-gons are evil, triangles are illegal. They are not. They are actually very useful in a lot of circumstances, but we teach you that way first because if you just run wild with them, you will be sorely disappointed when none of your meshes actually look the way they're supposed to in Engine. We're going to go through this the proper way now though, and we're going to work bit by bit. Remember, this is our blockout. I want there to be as little geometry as possible. I'm going to grab this edge and slide it back until we have roughly the same shape. Same with this one, slide it down. Right, sliding it back. We're just working bit by bit. This bevel here, I'm going to just ignore it for now. It's not that important to our overall shape, not super important to our blockout. The main thing here is just making sure our proportions are all hunky-dory. I'm going to make another n-gon here. Not too worried about it yet. Why do we want to work with these n-gons? That's a good question. Let's say this wasn't an n-gon. Vertex. So if I move this over here and we create this extra loop, we've now gotten rid of our n-gon. But if I want to bevel this edge later, which I do, right, we're potentially creating extra geometry here that we don't want. By having n-gons, we're never going to run into an issue where we have extra geometry that's crashing in or destroying our bevel or anything like that. Right? These are starting to overlap now. They can't overlap if there's nothing here. So we're going to come up and clean this up later, but for just working for now, this is way simpler. We're going to keep working proportionally. We're trying to build up our proportions bit by bit. So once we're done with this piece, we'll move on to the next piece. So we can do these wheels. Very simple. I'm going to make a cylinder. I'm going to reduce this down to something like 12, maybe. Rotate it, fit it into place, add a mirror modifier. We're not too worried about all the nitty-gritty parts just yet. We're just going to block it out. So boom, we'll add a modifier as well, a mirror. I don't want to have to move this origin point here though. Okay, we're working piece by piece. So this origin point in the middle of this wheel means that if I want to mirror the wheel later, it's super easy. I can just mirror it over on itself. But I still want the wheel on this side. So what can we do? Well, the mirror modifier has an extra spot here for a mirror object. And that mirror object can be anything in your scene, and it uses the origin point. So what I'm going to do is create an empty, something you probably don't use or probably haven't used to this point. An empty is just a object that looks like this, and all it is holding data. In this case, the data we want it to hold is just its position. So if I leave it right here at the world center, we can just rename it to our empty dead center. You don't have to rename it, this just helps later because you can find it easier in your list. So now if I go to my mirror object, if I hit empty dead center, I know it's going to mirror right across this y-axis. Any object I have is going to mirror right over. So we're doing way less work. So if we're going to follow the same process as everything else, I'm going to just kind of move this into place. There it is, super loose, super light. And I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate it and bring it up to the front. It's just a cylinder, so it works just fine over here as well. Scale it up, tell us roughly in place. Okay. Now we know that these are all lined up from our side view. We just have to go into our top view and line them up again. So where is this supposed to go? We know it's going to have to move in underneath that shroud. Where is this going to go? It's going to move in here. And we're going to scale it on X until it's roughly the right shape. Control A, apply, Control A, and apply. Right, super simple. Everybody can do this. Everybody's going to be able to get through the blockout phase. We move on to another piece. We've got another cylinder here. I can grab our existing cylinder. I'm going to move it in, get rid of the mirror. How do we get this cylinder back to center? Very simple. Shift S. Shift S is your new best friend. You probably didn't use it in modeling 1 because it's not super necessary. Now you're going to be using it literally all the time. I think it's the hotkey I press the most. Cursor to world origin moves your cursor back to the center. Shift S again, selection to cursor moves whatever you have to world origin. Boom. Now I know it's perfectly aligned and I can move it down here. To align it exactly with my wheels, I'm using snapping. So up here we've got this little magnet tool and it's set to vertex and active. It's going to snap whatever vertex I'm hovering to the active origin of my object while in edit mode. So if I go like that and then like that, you'll see it snaps. So I can use the middle point. I now know it is dead center between these two wheels. We can shrink it down and extrude it. I want to shrink it down a little bit more, but I don't want to change the length. So it's already a good length. I don't really want to change that. We can use Shift and then A axis. So if we use Shift Z, right? You guys are probably familiar with, if I hit scale Z, it's going to scale only on the Z axis. But if you hit Shift Z, it's actually going to scale on every axis but the Z axis. So why is this useful? Well, for something like this, we don't want to scale it on the X axis. So if I hit Shift X, scale, Shift X, it'll just change the thickness of it without changing it on the X axis. So we can shrink it down to size. Okay. It is a little bit repetitive, this part. It's just blocking out. We're not getting into the details. But the reason we're doing this is because we want to build up the proportions of the object. This is the most important part. So we slowly move on to bigger and bigger pieces. What's next? We can use this piece. Again, I need this to be straight dead center, so we'll use the same technique. Make a cylinder. 12 is good. Move it to the origin. Shrink it down. Snap it to here. Scale it up. Move, scale, move, scale. Switch views. Bring it up. Bring up the bottom. Okay. We know we have another section underneath it. So we're going to duplicate, bring down. The one issue with this kind of view, something like this, we don't know if this is square or cylindrical, right? So you will still need to infer things here and there, but from 2D on the side, a square and a cylinder are going to look identical when we're just drawing the outline. That's why you still need to have additional references like this. This is a bad example because you can't really see. But we know here from this additional reference that that part is square. We also have it up here. But we now know that that's square. So that makes our lives a lot easier. I'm going to create a new cube. And again, just to be sure, I want to move this to world center. Boom, center. Okay. And here's another trick we can use to make sure that everything lines up. So I'm going to make this square, put it in place roughly where it belongs. But modeling it into this part of the image, or even this part of the image, is a little bit misleading here and there. It's a little bit hard to tell where our corners and edges need to be. So we're going to use Alt-D. Does anyone remember the difference between Alt-D, Shift-D? Jaden?
One duplicates it exactly as like almost like a
Unique
exact copy. So whatever you do to the first one will change the second one, and then one just copy and paste it as a new copy.
Yeah, so it's called instancing. So what's happening here is when I hit Alt-D, it's creating an instance, or in essence, a literal duplicate of my existing object. And if I edit mode this one, it does the same. Can anyone tell where this is going? I can't use this part to model it because I can't see it. I can use this part. I can see this. So if I just come up here and let's start modeling this the same way we box modeled everything else, we have our big portion. We're going to ignore that round bit for now. We're just blocking out the shapes as they are. We'll bevel this edge. There. Now we know that this is right here, and we know that it's right down here. I've modeled it to what we can see, and it's applying to what we can't. So this is another way to get around your references being a little bit poor, is you can model everything in different places. So now, again, from the top, I can't tell how wide this is supposed to be from the side. I can from the top. So this I can do on this section. Okay. Boom. We now know that this part is correct. Just a little side note. A lot of times you'll see this cursor pop up while I'm modeling. This is an add-on for making mirrors more like the way they work in Maya. If you ever see me do this, all that's happening is it's just mirroring the objects. So you can kind of see what's happening as if I had a mirror enabled. You can do the exact same thing by just deleting half your mesh and using a mirror. I just prefer to work this way on both halves at once and then mirroring it over instead of using the modifier, just so I know my stack is cleaner. But again, you can recreate this just with the mirror. So now that I'm done knowing that this is all lined up, I can delete my bonus one, and I've still got the block out right where I need it. All right, and we keep going. Has anyone been sitting thinking about what they want to model, and do they have a good idea? Jaden? Your skateboard? Keyboard? Skateboard. Okay, that is solid. That is a good one. I'll give you the go-ahead. I will remember, I swear. Who's? You have to do that anyway, but I will remember just so you can get started. Lucas?
My VR headset that's really blocking because of the IMAX one.
I trust you to be able to do something organic anyway, so you can go ahead with that as well. Ashley?
My synth that is in my room, so Cordamus one.
That's actually a fantastic one, possibly one of the best ones out there. I know somebody who did the exact same thing. Eric?
My rifle.
That's going to be complicated.
It's just a simple like bolt action rifle. That's it.
Still going to be complicated.
Okay. Good. Can I send you the reference images first before I go ahead?
You can. As somebody who's made a lot of guns in the past before for this, there are a lot more organic shapes than you might think. Especially the handle. You will spend, I don't know how long on the handle.
I've done it before, so.
You done it before?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Send me that then when you send the references as well.
Thank you.
My guitar.
Guitar,
Yeah.
another great one.
If you want a specific model, it's the Golden SD.
I'm not sure, is it electric or is it?
Electric, yeah.
That should be fine as well. Just you are going to struggle a little bit with the curves on the top of the surface. Just check to see that they aren't so curvy before you get started with that one. But yeah, that's pretty good as well. Callum?
Swords. I have a collection, so.
That's pretty simple, pretty easy. You should be able to do that one, no problem. I'd maybe look into something a little bit more complex if you have the time.
I would. I'm probably gonna start small for my way.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Anya?
USSR camera.
What?
USSR made camera. Old Soviet camera.
Okay, that sounds cool. Vintage cameras are cool. Graham?
Accordion.
Accordion. also that works as well.
Would a desk lamp be a good amount of complexity? Or?
Desk lamp, send me a picture, but probably a little bit simple.
Okay, I can probably think of something else.
Okay. So if you've just told me what it is and I'm cool with it, you can get started literally right now, and then that way you're not just like totally wasting the class time. You might learn things while you're watching me, you might not. It really depends on who you are and where you're at. Because you could probably guess what every single one of my steps is going to be here. Match shape to picture. Exactly, Jaden. Every single object that you see on this mesh that is different in real life should be a different object on the actual model. So if I hold up this again, let's use this as an example. How many different parts do we have here? What should we break up, right? There's a lot of ones that are pretty obvious, but there are a lot of ones you probably aren't going to think about. Obviously, we have a leg, and this leg is connected to this little rubber piece. It's quite obvious that these are different components, and so we'd model them as separate components. But how about something like this top piece, right? We're probably trying to model this as one big sphere, but it's not. It's two halves of a big sphere, right? This is a totally separate mesh than this. And you might think that's not going to matter, but it will. Because this front is going to have a different amount of complexity than the back. We're going to need more vertices to support this kind of stuff. Those vertices, if we're making this one mesh, are going to have to carry over to the front. And we're going to end up with a bunch of uneven polygons or spaces where we need to nuke a bunch of extra vertices. So just by separating it into different areas that need different complexities, we can make this a really, really simple process, right? Even something like this blue logo on the front, different object. The mesh, this mesh, this mesh, this mesh, all different objects, right? Long and hard and break down your references for every specific part that is not connected to another. There is no need to model everything exactly to one mesh. So that's another thing I'm thinking about as I'm going through this is what is each piece. So here we see, and the way these usually work for car jacks is you have two pieces of the handle that you snap together, that way it's just easier to carry around and put in the boot of your car. So I know from just looking at this that this piece is separate from this piece. So I'm going to use V to split where the pieces would interact, L to grab one, and P to separate it into its own object. Now I know these are two separate objects, even though they're in the same spot. All right, we'll keep moving this along. Another piece that we know we need to make is the underside here. Add a cube, shrink it down, same process. If you can do all this with just cubes, you are well in the clear. Everything else will be so easy. Okay, we're gonna add one edge loop and then shrink it down. Nothing crazy. Try to match. Okay, still keeping all of our shapes as simple as possible. Move this up, start with a cube, move it into place roughly. Start moving our vertices into place. What is going on? There you go. Okay, this part is a little bit more complicated. I know that this is a flat pit going into a cylinder. You would only know that, of course, if you have the object, which is, again, why I recommend you do something like that. For now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move my 3D cursor and add a cylinder, and we'll worry about the connection between these two things later. So we'll move this into place roughly and move this up. Okay, I also know, again, because of actually having one of these things, which helps, that this handle goes inside of this bit, which is where all your gears and stuff is to actually use the thing. But we'll keep going. What piece is next? We've got these covers that are sitting out. They're going to be one piece later, but for now we can separate them. Move over here. New cube. Shrink. Shrink. Move it into place. Nothing crazy. Still just a cube, right? We'll slowly work on polishing our blockout when the time comes. Right now, we just want to make everything as simple as possible. Checking all of our proportions regularly to make sure everything makes sense here. Okay. What else can we quickly block out? Take another look at our reference. We've got all of these little nicks and knacks all over the place, bolts and things like that. And we know from the reference that we've got a block here in the back. So even though we can't see it from here, if you had better references, you'd be able to, but we'll add our block at the back. Anybody totally lost, or are we still kind of okay here? So all I've done is use very limited tools to build up our proportions. I'm not using edit mode hardly at all, like pretty sparingly. Haven't added any extra edges or anything like that. Super sparingly. Okay. This needs to be mirrored. We're gonna do the same thing. Add the mirror. Just check our mirror object. Find our empty mirror. Slowly building up bit by bit. We know we have another extra cylinder here. I'm gonna make a new one, move this over, expand it a bit, slot it into place. Mirror it on our center. We have a bolt here. Gonna do the same thing, unsurprisingly. Okay. Don't worry, I won't hold you here for too much longer, probably just the next half hour, and then when Silksong gets out, we'll get out of here and go about the rest of our day. Because this part's pretty simple. This is kind of what we'll do every week. So I've shown you how to block it out. You're now watching me do the same thing over and over, but you get what's going on. So if I go home now and finish the block out entirely on my own, you should have an understanding of what to actually do next. It's just another cube moved into another spot. Again, unsurprising to nobody. Here we have a bolt for the axle that actually lets this thing pump up and down. So I'm just gonna real quickly drag this across. Or better yet, just mirror it. Back to empty dead center. Something else you can do, if I get rid of all of these mirrored objects real quick, you can just work one half at a time. So I'm missing all of my mirrored objects over here. I'm gonna add just the one. I'm gonna click everything I want to mirror at my middle point. Then I'm gonna click the one object that is mirrored, hit Control L, and copy modifiers. Boom. Everything that I had selected now has that same modifier, so I'm not having to go in and click, boom, empty dead center, boom, empty dead center. I just know I have to do it later. Okay, we're gonna slowly keep pushing through this. We've got a few more things to sort of add on here. We know that there's this extra bar at the bottom to support with the swinging of the arm. We can't really see it, but we know it's there, so we're gonna add it. And we also know that it's built directly off of this piece. So instead of making a brand new one, I'm just gonna grab this piece, use an edge loop to extrude and then separate. And now I know that this is lined up with this angle. And then we can go ahead and get rid of that extra edge we made. All right. I'll give it a little bit of thickness and then loosely move it into where it's supposed to be. Move it down, move it over. Again, I don't feel like clicking so much, so I'm just gonna click something that already has the mirror, boom, copy. All right, you can get really fast at this stuff if you just practice it enough. We'll slowly move into other parts. Let's move this up. And now, at this point, we've blocked out almost everything. We'll just add something like this, roughly, loosely. Not perfect either, but it's just a blockout. Okay. We'll shade things smooth just to get a better idea of what everything's looking like. And we can check how our proportions are. All right. So if this object feels pretty good, we can move on. Once everything's sort of blocked out, we can actually start polishing up things here and there. Again, how many of you paint? Blues, Sonia, brown? No, that's all right. When we're painting, we're doing the same thing as we're doing right now. We're building up from our largest shapes to our smallest shapes. It is the same process, right? In painting, you're trying to see everything as its own big blob of color, light and dark, or however you're approaching it. In this, we're trying to come up with every big blob as its own piece. So now that we have our blockout roughly in place, we've got the majority of our different components built, we can start to move into smoothing up our larger parts. So at this point, we'll start adding maybe some smooth biangles just to make everything look a little bit nicer. I'm gonna hit Control A on everything and apply our scales. And now I know that all of our objects have a scale of 1. And that way, when I start to do things like add bevels, the numbers are all going to be correct. So we're done with the blockout for the most part. We're starting to get into more nitty gritty. So the one that I left earlier, we have this big bevel right here. We can go ahead and find our corner pieces, grab this edge, and bevel it out. I'm still keeping it pretty low. No matter which high poly method we use, we're gonna end up with a way higher resolution bevel. We just need enough to support the shape. So in this case, something like 3 is fine, or 4, right? And our mirror is gonna apply it to both pieces. So boom, that's one piece done. I'm going to now hide everything else except the reference planes. Just so we can see everything a bit better. Because you can see that these pieces don't actually go perfectly straight, but they curl out towards the top. So we're gonna add another edge loop here that sort of supports this curl out to the top. Here we go. Move that in. Expand this out. And then sort of slowly start to build closer and closer to this reference. This is where those observation skills are kind of going to come in handy. And having the object is going to come in handy. Because we know that this is actually curling out this way. So I'm going to just do a quick fake of it to sort of get it sorted out, started. This is a tool you've probably not really used before. If I can find it. Shear. And this essentially lets you create a straight angle rotation for any edge. So if you need a whole random set of arrays, so this is non-planar, it's like a giant mess, but I still want it to all line up together, I can use shear to just kind of give it an angle. And then move it in, knowing that we're getting closer to our final shape, but we still have this workable angle. Right, as opposed to doing something like flattening it, which you don't have a ton of control over. Okay, we'll keep going piece by piece. Next is these pieces. We can actually extrude out our sides. I'm still not worried about being perfect. This is still the blockout. We'll worry about being perfect when we're polishing and thinking about adding our subdivisions and everything. Okay, I'm going to do one side, and I'm going to use that mirror technique to just pop it over. That's why we want to keep these origin points at these points. Now I can just mirror this and I don't have to worry, and it's already mirrored on the other side. So I've done a quarter of the work I would have had to do otherwise, which is obviously way better than doing all of it. I do just want to flatten this out though. I'll worry about that later. I'm going to grab this, flatten it. Again, instead of doing it 3 more times, just going to mirror. Now it's flattened. Piece by piece, what else can we work on? We know that this bit has a little part that folds in and extends. So we can grab this, move it back. We're just working slowly here, piece by piece. Move back, extrude, scale it in. Extrude. And the opposite kind of applies for this piece. So we're going to grab both ends of this, inset it a little bit, and then I'm using Control E to bridge edge loops, and then now I've got a hole. Okay. So these 2 pieces are roughly done. I'm going to section this off to make it easy to grab a handle. So Control D, P to separate, new object. Now we can just grab this, scale it up, and we have a handle, roughly. Also, just from experience, I know these handles are hollow, but that's, again, what you need the reference for. So same technique, I, Control E, bridge. I, Control E, bridge. Now everything's hollow. Okay. What else can we move on to? We know that this piece has these little ridges in it. So we can add those piece by piece. Extrude those slightly. It's not a lot, but it's enough. From our reference, we know that there's a little rubber piece usually that sits right here. So expand that out. And now we'll do a little bit of debugging. I'm going to go ahead and turn on face orientation. And oh, would you look at that? That little rubber piece I just extruded is red. So what does this mean? Jacob?
Faces are inverted?
They're inverted. So quick fix, we just select them, invert them. We're good to keep going. Honestly, I'd recommend working with face orientation on all the time if you are going to upgrade to 4.43. Back in the day, it was a pain because it makes everything blue, and that sucks. But as of 4.4, they've changed it now, so your normal faces are actually just normal looking. So I have it on right now, but you'll notice everything's not blue. It just turns the bad faces red. So way easier to work with. Yep.
Even if people aren't upgraded, they can change that in their keyboard preferences.
Good to know. I did not know you could do that. So there you go. So even if you're not updated, you can switch it in the settings. Right? So these also just happen to be inverted. We can fix that. Okay, see how we're building up bit by bit here? I'm not trying to make any drastic changes all at once because I want the whole model to work together the entire time I'm working on it, right? I'm not finishing one piece and then trying to make everything else build towards it. We want to go through this bit by bit. If you're tightening screws in a computer, for example, right, you're doing it in a star pattern to make sure you don't accidentally break everything. Everything should be even pressure-wise. Same here. As we go through, everything should be even detail-wise. We're just working piece by piece. So we can go onto one of these wheels, and I'm use that exact same technique I just used like 4 times. Inset, tell us about the right size, Control E, bridge. That's one wheel done. Second wheel, grab, select everything. Inset down to about the right size, Control E, bridge, done. All right, super simple. Up that a bit. And we'll up this a bit. Okay, cool. At this point, there's not much more we can do without adding edge loops. So basically everything is covered as far as just the building blocks. We are gonna have to start adding edge loops. But because we have a good solid foundation, we've got good proper blockouts, this part's pretty easy. What can we start with? Let's start with, again, we'll start with the sides. So I'm gonna select just these 2 things, isolate, and I'm just gonna cut this in, plain and simple. Just use the knife tool to loosely block it out. Okay, what do we get? A bunch more n-gons, but again, we're not too worried about that right now. We'll fix it later. Kind of extrude this in, and then delete our outside so it kind of feathers out. And then we can start to bevel these to roughly the right shape. I'm going to use 4 for all of these. You notice earlier here I used 4. Here I'm trying to use 4. The reason for that is pretty simple. It's when I'm doing all of these edges, later we are going to have to connect up this topology. So if we stick to the same number for our bevels and everything else, it becomes a lot easier. I know if I have 4 edges here, I can just go boom, 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 boom for them to connect, right? In some cases that's important, in some cases it isn't. For example, in this case it's not important because we're going to connect them differently, but here I can drop this down, not to like 3 or something random. I know if I go to 2 bevels for this smaller one, if I have 2 of them, that's 4, right? So keeping ahead of the game on this stuff makes it way easier down the line to connect everything. So now my 2 and my 2 makes 4. Super simple. It's overlapping a bit, so I'm just gonna move this down. My 2 and my 2 makes 4, right? Wacky geometry everywhere, removed, gone. We'll fix it in post. Okay, we have our mirrors, so it's all applying to both sides. How about that? Not too bad, right? And we just keep going. The wheels. We can take a look at our reference and we see that they're actually kind of hollow, right? They've got a little bit of material on the inside, but for the most part, they're kind of hollowed out. So we're gonna add an edge loop here and sort of expand it. Remember what I said earlier. We want this origin point to be in the middle of our object, even though it's mirrored, because now I can just mirror it over and I know it's applied. So I've done a quarter of the work, not even a half, a quarter, right? That's gonna speed things up so drastically. Another goal for this class is just to speed you guys up. This stuff is slow, no doubt about it. It takes a long time. That's why you have 5 weeks. But there are definitely ways to get faster. So I'm just trying to replicate that shape best I can. We'll bump this up a little bit, smooth those out. And now these are a bit of an interesting case. You'll notice just how they sit. It's kind of hard to see how well they're reflecting the light and everything. So what I'm going to do is just add a quick bevel, a small one, tiny one. It's not intended to stay on the model, but it's just to help us keep visualizing things. So I'm going to select this edge, and then I'm going to hit, oh, this is throwing me off a bit. It's a hotkey, it's not a hotkey in default Blender. So we're going to go up here to mean bevel weight. So if you're confused where this panel is, we have the item tab here, and we're going to go to mean bevel weight. If we just set that to 1, you're going to notice our edge turns blue. And what that means is when we add a bevel, so I'll just go in here and add a bevel, right? I don't want to do this destructively. I could just hit Control B and bevel the thing, but this is just temporary. We might want to change how much this bevels later, or if we even want it to bevel it at all. So I'm going to use this bevel. By default, it's going to bevel everything on the mesh, but that's not what we want. So we can change it to weight. And this is going to let only what we have applied this blue to bevel. So again, our amount here is very important. That's why we've modeled to scale. So if I shrink this down to like 0.001, it's not super noticeable, but at least we're like catching an edge a little bit. And that'll just help us visualize. So we can apply this to some more edges to help. In bevel weight, we'll just set that to 1 here. All right, for another little bevel, same thing here. It's not super noticeable, but it does just help see this from different angles a bit better. All right. And we can always decide later to up the resolution. So we'll keep going. This piece, we know it's kind of round at the bottom. Now is the time to add that kind of geometry. So we'll bevel this bottom out. Again, not a ton of bevels, just trying to keep everything super simple. And we can see here that our existing blockout doesn't quite match the shape. We can just use extra edge loops here to cut that size roughly in half, right? If we wanted to, or we can expand by just moving this out and then mirroring. We can get rid of the part that makes it too big. I should probably explain that. So I want to reconnect these faces. An easy way to do that is to just extrude down. Then we can make sure that it's all lining up with snapping. And now I need to merge my vertices though, because these are just floating. They're not actually connected. So the way to do that, you hit A to select everything, and then I think it's like M? Yeah, M, and then you go by distance. But that's really slow. That takes forever. So I'd really recommend, if you don't already know, Blender lets you set hotkeys for any action as long as you can find it in the menu. So if I hit M by distance, I can right click and assign a shortcut. And these shortcuts are going to go into this Q panel. So every time I hit Q now, I've got some options. I've got create an edge ring, or select edge rings as a favorite, because that's something that comes up. And I've got by distance. So these are things that are pretty complex to do normally when you're trying to go through the menus, but here the edge rings example, if I just do this, then hit edge rings, you'll see it grabs all of the edge rings flowing in the same direction. But the one I use the most, if I hit A and then Q and then B, I can merge by distance. Why is this important? Well, M is on this side of the keyboard, right? The side I use my mouse with. I don't want to let go of my mouse. So if I bind it to QB, I can hit QB with my hand. I'm not taking any time. I'm not taking my mouse off it. This is like the 3D modeling version of people who use Linux. Boom. right? There's a reason Vim is still around after all this time. And this is a similar situation. Boom. Merge. Select them again. Boom. Now my faces are closed. Mirror. Right? Same thing on this side. We have a similar issue. So I'm going to move it into place. Okay. Delete. Grab my edges, bring them down, merge, boom. Okay. Mirror over, right? So I've now done all of that very quickly, very easily without disrupting any shapes or anything. Okay. Another piece that's like pretty polished up. Or else can we do this? A piece like this, it's actually kind of round here at the bottom, so not all the time your blockout is going to be the perfect starting point. The blockout is just for your proportions. I'm not even going to use this piece as I build this new piece. I just know that this is where my new piece needs to fit in roughly, right? But I know there's a cylinder end here. It's going to end kind of in a square. So rather than try to turn this square into a cylinder, I'm just going to move my cursor here and add a new cylinder and work from that with that blockout piece as a reference. So I'm moving it basically into place of where my blockout is. I can move it out, can scale it in, snap it even to my blockout to make sure it's like totally aligned. And then we can worry about like, okay, I need to delete here. And then we'll take this bit and we'll extrude it up and out. We'll match one of my edges and then the other. Right? And now I can delete this like old blockout. It doesn't matter as much. We'll clean this up. Right, fantastic. Okay. I want a hole here where we're going to put our axle through our wheel. So what can we do? Well, if I inset this like you normally would to create that hole, I've only got half of a cylinder. What we're going to do instead is find a good kind of middle point for our hole to go, and I'm going to introduce you to booleans. So we're going to get rid of this. Again, we have a big n-gon here, something you probably don't want to see, but for us it's okay because of what we're doing here. I'm going to add another cylinder, just shrink it down until it's roughly in place. How do we do good booleans? This is where we're starting to get fast with it. It's really easy. When you create a boolean, these edges need to come from somewhere. And the computer is pretty good at figuring out which edges it should go to, as long as you've provided them with those edges. If there aren't any, it's going to freak out and you're going to end up with terrible meshes. But here, we used a cylinder of 12 to make this rounded part. So I'm going to use a cylinder of 12 to make this part. And if they weren't aligned, I'd be aligning them as well. So I know that I can make an edge here, 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 etc., etc., etc. And then we get to the top, it doesn't matter as much. So with that known, this should be a pretty seamless process. I don't know if I have the add-on for it or not installed, but I do not. Old-fashioned way. We add a boolean. I'm going to select my cutter object. And then I'm going to turn on the wireframe so we can get an idea of what we're looking at. So we'll go in here, wireframe. You can see it's automatically connected this edge and this edge, right? So perfect. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4 loops going to 4 edges on the outside. Okay. This is good enough, so we're just going to apply it right away. I'm not too worried about it, right? We're still blocking out-ish. There'll be more advanced booleans later that we don't want to apply that we're just using for details. For example, a speaker grill. Good luck applying that. It's not going to happen. You're only going to do that on a high poly. So we're not going to worry about that kind of thing right now. But because this is a big port of our high poly, I'm going to just immediately apply it so we have that geo to work with and delete this, and now it's cleaner. So we can clean this up by using J, Shift R. So same thing. J is over here where M is, so I'm going to hit J once. But we also have in Blender this command Shift R. It just means repeat. So whatever command you did last, it's doing it again. So I've taken my hand off my keyboard to hit J, but now every other time I'm just going to Shift R. Shift R, Shift R. And now I don't have to keep going back to J way faster. All these little things, they add up when you're modeling something, especially something big, right? What do we do with all these? Oh no, we've got a bunch of extras. Nothing. We'll clean it up when the time comes, right? Like eventually we'll have to clean these up, something that looks like this. Right? Our evil triangles that aren't that evil after all. Or this one's probably better going here. Right, this is kind of what our completed game mesh is going to look like. Yep.
What is the advantage of making the triangle yourself and then instead of using the Blender triangulates?
Good question. And it ultimately just boils down to control. The triangulate modifier is good, but if I've triangulated it here, I know it's always triangulated. So the way, this is sort of for the computer graphics talk stuff, but the way the computer tries to understand things. It's going to take your 3 vertices. I don't have a whiteboard pen. I don't know why I stood up. It's going to take your 3 vertices, and it's just going to try and draw a line between 2 of them, basically. And the thing is, Unreal, the way it does it, it might do it differently. Blender, the way it wants it triangulated, might be differently than the way Painter wants it done. So if you use the modifier and the way Blender does it is a way that the other ones don't really like it so much.
I don't need the modifier, I mean,
hitting Control T.
Search, yeah, or whatever the actual thing is.
Control T. Right. Works well enough for most cases. But like, ew. What is that? Good luck texturing that. Why is it so slanted, right? We can just make cleaner geometry. Well, this technically will optimize it to the fullest. Like this will be, if you hit Control T, it will create the minimum number of triangles every time. It's always the absolute lowest. They're not pretty and they're hard to work with. So when we do it ourselves, typically we're trying to give it an idea less than the final result. So in this case, there's not enough edges for me to really sort of demonstrate that, but if I had like 12 edges, let's say, I would only be connecting like the one in the middle, the one on the outside, and the one on the other side, because then when I export it, I don't have to add those triangles, but every program will triangulate it the same because there's only one way to do it. We're giving the computer a guide as to how to triangulate it later without us having to triangulate it through that or triangulate it through the modifier or triangulate it like entirely by hand. It's sort of a mixture of both. We're just trying to understand what the computer needs to do its job. More examples of that will come up later when we actually start working in Engine. For now, in Blender, it doesn't seem to matter so much. So we'll talk more about that later. Anyway, for now, I don't actually want these because it makes it hard to work on, so I'm just going to mirror that back over like this. Problem with Blender, a little bit annoying. It needs 2 edges to support any kind of thing like this. Don't know why. If this was Maya, I could just dissolve these edges and everything would be hunky-dory and all of my bevels would be beautiful and perfect. But Blender requires you to have 2 edges. So try and make sure they're edges where they are pointing directly into each other. Okay? It should be as parallel as it can. I don't really know. You can't visualize the normals, but imagine there's normals on this thing. It should be as close to the other one as possible. If I have like this connected to this line is not parallel to the flow. Okay, so what's going to happen then is when I bevel, they're going to bevel different amounts and it's going to cause issues and yada, yada, yada. And then erase. Okay, so those 2 edges that you do have, just make sure you're putting them in the right spot. Then we carry on. With that out of the way, we can start to continue doing all of this. Make this bit thin, isolate, mirror. Extrude this inwards, delete these, mirror again. And connect everything. Okay. This is another one of those ones, because it's the exact same as these front ones, where it's kind of hard to see what's going on. If I take off the wireframe. All right, it's kind of hard to see what's going on here, right? Like, it looks like this is one flat face, even though it's actually convex. So I can add a bevel to fix that, or I'll show you an alternative to fix that, and it's using a higher quality viewport. So in your viewport shading settings, this will make your computer lag a little bit more, but you have more options. Here I can turn on cavity, which will show my edges in a little bit more detail. And that kind of just helps figure out what parts are outlined, as well as the shadow, which turning on the shadow will help a ton because now the light is actually being cast. And so even though this color is basically one, I can still tell there's something there because there's a shadow. Okay. So this is considered the EV high quality viewport. If you have an add-on like HardOps, this is a very easy switch. It makes your model look better and easier to understand. I would recommend you turn this on for most things, right? So it's kind of doing the job of having this bevel for me, right? I can still understand the shape way better now than if that was all off, right? Okay. So let's keep tweaking things here and there-ish. We'll do one more piece. It's 10 o'clock. Silksong is officially out. I'm gonna do like one more thing and then we'll get you guys out of here. So let's take another crack at these pieces here. Again, my blockout is built terribly. It's just meant to sort of show me what shape and space this is gonna take up. So I'm not looking to reuse this cursed little shape. That's just to help me with the proportions. I can now use something with new clean topology in its place. Okay, but I know roughly where it's gonna go. And I can basically at this point hide these. I'm hit M to make a new collection. Call it ref. And I'll include this in it as well. Then I can just go over here, click ref, make it red, and hide it. Okay. We'll work with this shape until we have roughly what we're looking for. Shrink things. Okay, still using this other piece as an example. We've got like a nice taper here. Oops. And because we're not really afraid of adding bevels at this point, I am going to bevel this part out just once to sort of mimic the shape a little bit better. And then once I've mimicked the shape a little bit better, I can add an actual bevel for the edge. Again, I'm going to make sure it's set to 4 just so I know when I combine things later, it's all good. We can delete that now. Again, this is just from owning one of these. I know that this is also hollow. Make sure you are checking your reference throughout. Okay, nice. So this is another one of those examples where you'd want to use something like shear. Let's say I wanted this to like have a nice flat angle. What are you gonna do? You're gonna sit here and like manually go oop, 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 and be wrong anyway because you're not a computer, so you can't calculate all that. We want to use the tools that we have to our advantage, whatever they may be. So you could use a shear to sort of smooth it out. You could use something like a, I forget what this is called, proportional editing to smooth it out. I'm going to go ahead and activate loop tools, which you should already have, but they changed how this works. It's now online extensions instead of built-in add-ons, so all of my add-ons are gone. Loop tools. Oops. Okay, I can use loop tools to flatten this out. There we go. And then move things into place. Cool. I would say that is more or less our completed kind of block out. There are obviously a bunch of different pieces I kind of ignored and everything, like this plate needs to be lower so that the cylinders can be put in here, but I will worry about blocking out the rest of it sort of on my own time. As we come into next class, we'll actually polish this up into a proper kind of high poly. So that'll be our like super detailed version of this object. So don't be surprised when you come back and this looks a little bit different. I should probably save it though, just in case it explodes. Any general questions for this kind of thing that we did today? Yes?
So this object, right, do you want to code this as a first assignment?
This object is the first assignment, yeah. So I'm going to open up sometime probably before 11, that first discussion board where you just post your reference images. And then on that, I'll directly reply and give you either the A-OK or the alright. If you've already told me in class, like Lucas and Jaden have, then you're good to go. If you want on your way out, you're more than welcome to just tell me your name and which prop you're planning on doing, and I'll kind of give you some direction from there. But yeah, try to get your reference images in. Remember, stand far away from your object by the next week, because you really got to get started on this. We only have 5 weeks, which is a little bit tight, but I'm sure we can get it done. Yep. Recording will also be posted online. Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I just have one quick question.
Gail the Gail.
About the GDW integration.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because I'm all done GDW and all that. But,
Right.
how should I go